Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead, and welcome to episode 152, December Writing Strategies. We like to focus on writing strategies during times of year when it's particularly tough to get any writing completed. And one of the ways that we do this at Defend, Publish, and Lead is to think through what are some challenges that are happening during this particular month that makes it different than any other month. So for many of us, we have a lot of holidays at the end of the year. We might have breaks from work or breaks where our children are at home or our partners are at home. There might be some travel involved. And just in general, a lot of people will say that the month of December just seems to feel shorter in terms of time that you can actually get any work completed. And so I want to point out a couple of different things that might help during December to provide some support. One of the things that I like to do with the clients that I coach is we actually open up the calendar, look at December, and I say this a lot, but we get the big old marker out and just cross out days that are just off the table. So for many people, that might be December 25th. That is the Christmas holiday. A lot of people celebrate Christmas. So that's a day that usually there isn't going to be any writing happening. So they just put a big X through that. There might be some travel days. There's also days that we look at much more closely when people are just overextended and unlikely to get some writing completed. So for example, at many of our colleges and universities, there are exam weeks happening. And if you're grading a lot and you're staying up late grading, you're trying to get your grades in, maybe that next morning you're not going to fly out of the gate and say, let's write that big article now. I have all my grading in. A lot of people that just tend to crash, they're just not going to do it. Also, I know one of the things that has happened a little bit for me is that there's a lot of sort of holiday related work commitments. So it could be that there's an end of the semester choir concert that some of my students are singing in and I want to go hear them or something like that. And then my own children have those sorts of activities. So a lot of times nights are taken up that I might have ordinarily been prepping for those final classes and grading and doing some other things. So I might have some more time to write during the day. Everything's just all overlapping and it just feels a lot busier. So one of the strategies I like to recommend is just seeing what time is actually there, because sometimes you might think, oh, I actually have more time. I have a whole week after that finals week and I'll get some work done. But when you look, you really only have, say, 2 mornings and part of an afternoon because there's all these other commitments. So, certainly looking at time can be a really helpful strategy here. Another thing that I like to do is to make an actual decision about what is happening with December. Is this a legit writing month? When does your regular writing schedule stop if you have one? When does it start back up again? So for me, I usually kind of think that mid-month is sort of the cutoff point for me. So I really try to stay with any writing that I'm trying to do between December 1st and December 15th and just try to stick to as much as possible whatever schedule I have set. So for me, I've mentioned this before, is I do try to write somewhere between like 8 and 12 hours a week. So in December, it's definitely closer to 8, and probably on some weeks it'll be 5 or 6, but I'm still getting some things completed. I'm still making a point of getting some writing completed and still working on projects. But after December 15th, I usually do a couple of things. One is that I try to take at least an afternoon or a morning to just look very quickly at that spring semester and make some decisions about when is writing starting again. So is that January 3rd? Is it the first day of class? I am a big proponent of always writing in the new semester on the first day of class. I just assume the weeks leading up to that class, I'm not doing anything. I don't care about it. I'm not going to get any work completed. For others, they actually like to do more work to get it completed. So that first week of class, because they're so involved in the teaching and the prepping, that way they don't have to do quite as much during that first week. But I tend to work in an opposite way, where I just say, all right, when the semester starts on January 7th, that day I'm writing. So what time of day is that going to happen? And I'll figure it out. And maybe that first day I'll only work for a half hour, but I will work in those other hours during the week. And I do tend to just say, all right, these are my open blocks of time. I've got to hit at least 8 hours. I'd like to get 10. If I get 12, it would be amazing. So I have a little bit of a flexible schedule there. So I think that's another really important thing to do with December, is just to think through, when does writing stop for me for the end of the year, and then when does it start up again? And that way you can decide, over the winter break, if you have one, are you doing any work or not, and making a decision there. So for people in the southern hemisphere, you might have some time off around the end of the year as well, and same decision: are you doing anything during the summer break or not? You can also do what I would consider sort of low key or bonus writing, where you don't have any expectations to write, but if you happen to have a free morning or an afternoon, you've got a project you want to take along with you to, say, a coffee shop or wherever, and you can get a little bit of work done. It's all a bonus there, not an expectation. It's maybe having that pressure off is a good way maybe to finish out the end of the year. Particularly if you found the last couple weeks of this year frustrating because you're just not getting much done, you're too busy, you're starting to get overwhelmed. This might be a way to sort of ease back in. But I do like to take at least some time before Christmas, not too long, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, to just really take a quick look at the spring and decide, what kind of projects am I working on? So that's, again, your writing project mix. We have an episode on that. I'll put a link in the show notes. And, what am I doing about writing? Where is it going to go? For me, I know I'm very, very fortunate that I will be on a sabbatical in the spring of 2024. So I'll still be doing this podcast, but I won't have the teaching obligations that I normally have. And so for me, I need to really flesh out what that looks like. So I will make a sabbatical podcast of some sort, because I know people are always curious about those and sometimes come to us for help structuring them. So figuring out what's happening in the spring, making some decisions about when writing starts and stops, that's another thing to think about. Another thing that I like to do in December is really think through how to make writing kind of special for the end of the year. So that could be a kind of just change up whatever music I'm listening to. I might change locations again. I might do it at a different time of day. So depending on where you are, I'm located in Ohio, and our state at this time of year, particularly with our recent time change, everything is pretty dark. Like I'm recording this now kind of late afternoon. It is almost dark outside at 4:15 p.m. So, it's one of those things that maybe this isn't the best time for people to write, but I knew that this is a better time for me to record a podcast than maybe early in the morning, where I want to use some of that energy to work on some writing, or, have kind of a slower start to the day. So those are a couple things to think about. Here would just be two others. One would be, I do try to think at the end of the year, I've been writing since January. What's something that I would like to do differently that I haven't done already? And I know one thing for me is that I recently moved, or somewhat recently, within the last 2 years, I've moved from using a print project management chart to Asana. And again, have a podcast episode on that. I love Asana. I've gone all in on it. I use a free version. So if anybody's interested in checking it out, you can check out how I did it. But any of those other ones, Trello, Todoist, any of those are, might be an option for you, or even the same, print chart that I used. I have one, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. You can see what I used and modified it. But I know one thing that I would like to do a little bit better of a job on is thinking through not just an overall project mix, but looking at some projects that have been hanging around for a while and just deciding, am I ever going to do these? Do I want to put these maybe more like in an archive, where if I ever want to, I can come back to them? But I know one thing that's been dragging me down a little bit with writing is just kind of making a decision about some projects. So I've got a couple that I could do. I'm kind of interested, I'm kind of not interested. Like, I don't know how to describe those projects. Some of us probably have them. Some of them are a little bit older that for one reason or another, I never got them finished. Something else got in the way. I got into a more interesting project, and I just have to decide, am I finishing that project or am I letting it go? So I know for me, one of my sort of New Year's resolutions with writing is just to try to decide on some of those projects, so I can either like kind of clean them out of my queue of all my projects and just make some decisions there. And then another thing that I know for me in December is that I think I'm going to embrace the idea that the schedule's all chopped up and crazy anyway. So why don't I just try to get by with, some 20-minute, 30-minute writing sessions, and then just kind of keep a tally. So almost like using a pedometer to see how many steps you get. I'll really be looking in this case as like, okay, I got 20 minutes this morning, I got 30 minutes this afternoon, I got another 20, tomorrow, I've got 15 the next day. It's a little scattered, but I know for me, if I let too many days go by before I write, then I have to remember what I was doing. And I don't ever mind doing that. I kind of am very gentle with myself about that. I say, it is what it is. Let's just get going. What is it that I have to do? What do I need to figure out and use again? But for a lot of people, I think that ramping up period sometimes can be a source of anxiety. So anything I can do to just get a little bit more writing out before I decide to take off from, say, December 15th to January 7th. Usually that is the longest period of time that I don't do any writing. And so for me, I sort of make that deliberate decision that I'm not going to do it, but at least I do think ahead and do some planning in that time to decide what I'm doing for the next year. But we have plenty of other wonderful December writing strategies. And so what I am putting on the screen right now for audio listeners is a screenshot of our workshop that is on December 1st for our writing strategies. And so one of the things that I think is really a great thing about Defend and Publish is we've really kind of looked at doing workshops where we try to speak to whatever the crisis is of the moment. And so at the time that you're actually getting this particular episode, this workshop would have already taken place. But this recording is free to everybody who wants to do this workshop. So if you're interested in getting the recording for this, you are more than welcome to email me and get it. Many of you will have already gone to it. So I want to just say something to those of you that already attended or already viewed the recording. This particular event gave a whole bunch of different ways to sort of think through how to write in December specifically, but I think these might also be some good strategies for January when we return. And partially that's because some of January might still be spent on a holiday break. The semester might be starting, you might lose time to like new class preps and things like that. So I think a lot of the strategies are really relevant. Because the workshop is free, we are happy to distribute the recording to anybody that wants it at any point. So if you did not attend and you want to get the recording for this, you can just email me at christine@defendandpublish.com. So that's the email address I use to do a lot of our podcast connection. But if you're interested in getting it, you can get it that way. I'm happy to share it with you. Another resource that I think is useful that won't be too late, that you can start really at any point, one of our sponsors for our podcast that we usually have them on in episodes that we have a little bit more a shorter time frame to talk with everyone, is our Textbook and Academic Authors Association partnership, and they always do a month of motivation. So this is a really cool benefit. It's a really great organization to join. I've talked about them lots of times. You can check out the episode on why I love the TAA. They're fantastic. But the month of motivation, I think this is also a really good strategy to try to make sure that you're hitting some of your goals. Because for some of you, you really can't waste December. So I know some PhD students that are trying to, defend projects or graduate in December. So you can't, there's just no more time. You can't do that. Others of you, maybe you have a tenure application due, or you're really behind on the publishing cycle, and maybe, you lost, 2 months to a serious illness or whatever was happening. So sometimes it can be helpful to join one of these challenges, like a month of motivation, or, like our November, we had our academic writing challenge, if you did that one with us. And if you want the link to that, again, email me, you can get it. But with this one, I kind of like the idea, because what you'll get here are daily emails, you'll get some video content, you'll get some other things from the Textbook and Academic Authors Association. And I like it because if you sort of commit that, hey, December is a crazy month, so I'm going to lean in and do this month of motivation. This might be a way to actually get more writing done in a way that maybe you haven't thought through, making December a super productive month. So I will put a link to our show notes for that particular link, and you can check out that if you're interested in joining them. They tend to have months of motivation all the time. You can even have an ongoing membership where you basically can start fresh every month, which I really like. So hopefully you found these helpful, and happy writing.